BlueSpice accessibility, of course, that is a very important topic for a lot of our customers, especially if you work for the government and you use BlueSpice there. You, of course, need to know the status of BlueSpice accessibility. And in general, if you're a private company, it is also good to know whether you have to comply with any requirements relating to accessibility. So today we look briefly at the following topics. First, you need to know whether you even have accessibility requirements when you use BlueSpice. Then I'll talk a little bit about the implementation challenges. It's a really complex topic if you develop web-based software, and we need to get a framework for evaluating the accessibility. Then, of course, the big question is BlueSpice accessible? We also look at how to create accessible content. Of course, BlueSpice comes as a product, but your employees or your colleagues are going to fill the wiki with a lot of content. That's not only text-based, but you have all kinds of elements on a web page, such as tables, images, maybe videos. So you have to know how to keep BlueSpice accessible if you add content to it. We document the status of our accessibility and we post it on our help desk, and I show you what information you can expect there. And I'll also have a brief demo session where you can see BlueSpice accessibility in action. So I have a few slides I have to rush through because of our short time today, but these are things we need to know to understand the requirements for BlueSpice. The technical requirements for accessibility are just an international standard called WCAG, which are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. They have been around for many, many years and always get updated whenever there are changes in the versions of these web standards, such as HTML and so on. And they are, of course, publicly available. It's a long list of requirements, and they are at the core of the accessibility work of any developer. You have to know that there are different conformance levels, and each checkpoint in the WCAG standard refers to a level. And for software, the legal requirements are that you should comply with levels A and AA. AAA are usually more the requirements for maybe public sector websites to add content in sign language or in simple language, especially on German government websites. You will see those AAA requirements sometimes implemented. Then the evaluation criteria are also interesting to know. On one hand, from this WCAG standard, usually you test and then you evaluate whether a certain feature in your software or on your website supports the requirement, partially supports it, or doesn't support it, or is not applicable. And usually you find these evaluation in so-called VPATs. These are voluntary product accessibility template documents that a lot of private companies publish on their websites. You can also see them on big companies such as Apple or Microsoft. Usually, if you Google their VPATs, you will find them. It's always a standard template that they fill in and then evaluate themselves. And you have to decide whether you believe their internal self-evaluation or not. I think when you evaluate your own software that you have to sell, of course, you tend to lean towards giving you a slightly better evaluation than maybe an external tester would. There are also in Germany external tests available, and they have slightly different evaluation criteria that test against BitFAO regulation, which we will see in a second. And they're a little bit more granular, which I find interesting, because here you have 6 possible evaluations from fulfilled to mostly, to partially, to mostly not, or not fulfilled, or not applicable. So it's interesting, depending on the testers that test your software. They are here working on a scale, and of course you always hope that they will say that you fulfilled a certain criteria, and they have a big leeway there. when they're testing. The standard is also the technical reference for the German regulations, which is called the BITV 2.0, which stands for Barrierefreie Informationstechnikverordnung. So it's the regulation for accessible information technology and applies to the federal level of web-based applications and websites and so on. And then the federal states, usually they have their own legislation, but they always reference BITV, which again applies simply WCAG techniques. And also BITV includes a sample declaration for public authorities. So anytime you go to a German website on the state or federal level or even city level, you will see here is the the Federal Ministry of Education. So you go to these websites and they're always required at the bottom to have a link to their accessibility declaration. And you usually can't find it in English because this template that they use is only available in German. But even if you don't know German, it's interesting to look at it because they all look exactly like this. And usually here they tell you that the following areas of their website are not or only partially accessible. And then here you see, for example, this ministry here has a lot of bullet points still through a lot of checkpoints about graphics, about indicators, PDFs, HTML structure, focus. That's all the things we test for. So a lot of things are missing, and they simply then state that the website partially complies with the requirements, and they're planning it for a certain time that they will work on that and remedy these issues. So you hardly ever find really in any country just even websites that fully comply. Yet here we have an application like BlueSpice, and usually when people want to buy BlueSpice and they come with government money, they simply ask the question, is BlueSpice accessible, yes or no? So that's always interesting how that is viewed, because a lot of people simply say, well, we have the law that we need to comply with, and please, we can only purchase your software if it complies. While in the real world, we see that not even websites usually fully comply. So they also have to provide a feedback mechanism, of course, on the websites, which is already pretty much telling you that usually you can't comply 100%, so people need to be able to get in touch with you. For the German context, there's also an interesting list of the BITV test criteria, which I have linked here. It's only available in German. And for web applications, the test criteria here start with 0.911. And it kind of these 111s and so on. That's the same numbering that you will see in WCAG. So you can compare if you need the English requirements to the German ones. But I really like this site because you can clearly see if you look at something, what does it mean? And you can go to what is being checked and why is it done and how is it checked. And that's pretty much how in Germany, the external testers, they follow these guidelines here. So if you try to make sure that you pass these tests, you really look at the German requirements here and just put yourself in the shoes of a German tester to make sure you understand each requirement. Then there is another law which is very important here in Germany because it is a little different than the BITV, which is called Barrierefreiheitsstärkungsgesetz. A really nice long German word again, which simply means Accessibility Strengthening Act, and it is more focused on consumers and in the European context. And the interesting thing is that this is now a legal requirement that specifically targets the private sector and not the government anymore, like BITV. And so it defines the requirements for products and services after 2025. The usual suspects here: computers and operating systems, banking services, terminals, transportation, all these things that really most people use on a daily basis. They, of course, have to be accessible if they have any type of digital component to them. But what's interesting here and why I point it out is because it also applies to services. And here it especially mentions all online commerce. So as soon as you have a website here in Germany and you have a little online shop where you have like a checkout process, it has to also be checked for accessibility if you are a private company. The only exception is if you are a so-called Kleinstunternehmen, and it's a micro enterprise, so you have less than 10 employees. You can look at that, but for most companies it will apply, although I do assume that smaller or medium-sized companies will not have any legal trouble. If somebody complains about an accessibility issue, you will simply be asked to take care of the issue. But for private companies, of course, now that could be an issue here in Germany because there will be lawyers looking to find some problems here. What are the implementation challenges for application like BlueSpice? Unlike, let's say, applications that the government develops internally, we have here a bundle of extensions. The underlying mechanism or software bundle has a lot of extensions that BlueSpice developers never touch. We just use it as a basis, and then we add on our own extensions, of course, which are many and which we focus on making accessible. We also include extensions of third parties, and we can also not always influence right away the level of accessibility in these extensions. We include them nevertheless because they're very important for us and they add a lot of functionality to BlueSpice. I want to mention here, for example, semantic MediaWiki extensions, page forms, and things that are used heavily by our customers. But as I said, that are not things that we develop ourselves. So as a total, currently BlueSpice Pro has about 200 bundled extensions. You can look on your special version page to see the long list and who develops each extension. A lot of them are core extensions, which means you really want them or need them to run BlueSpice smoothly. But there are also some extensions you could deactivate. Let's say if you found some accessibility issues and you say we don't even use these extensions, then if you host BlueSpice yourself on premise, it should not be a problem then to simply turn these extensions off until they have no accessibility issues, if that's a problem for you. Another challenge really is that it takes a lot of effort really to make everything accessible. First of all, you have to make sure that your developers are up to speed with what all these checkpoints are. These BitFout checkpoints, it's a long list of 92 checks. And if you have to do that for most of your extensions, let's say if 50 of them are back-end extensions and 150 affect the graphical user interface somehow, you can multiply that and see how for every development cycle you might have a lot of work to make sure stuff that is accessible does not have new challenges reintroduced, or in general to test overall the status of accessibility, which also then, of course, costs a lot of time and a lot of money for a smaller company such as Hallo Welt. And currently, these are costs that we can really not add to the product, although it is really a core element now of our development cycles. Another challenge really is that often you do not get feedback from customers. Very often we have simply the requirement that BlueSpice has to be accessible, but over the years we get very little feedback from actual users who use these accessibility features. So we really don't know which ones would be a pain point and which ones are really just there because you have to comply, but it's hardly ever used anyway. So you really can't prioritize and you have to simply make everything accessible. So what's the current test status? The first test we had that was external was with the ITZ Bund, which is the Federal Information Technology Center here in Germany. And the reason why they tested BlueSpice was added to the federal cloud system and then got channeled through their accessibility testing. So we got the first test results back in January 2023. And the result was they always take pages of an application and thoroughly test them. And on these pages, they found several steps that could not be rated at least as fulfilled or mostly fulfilled, or the first two evaluations that are possible. And therefore, the assessment then was that the BlueSpice application is not BitFile compliant according to this test, which, as we have seen, to be 100% compliant would be very difficult, but you have to have a lot of these points have to be fulfilled or mostly fulfilled. So even if a lot of your extensions are partially and mostly fulfilled, it's not enough then that you are BitFile compliant. We are currently in our second external test, again with ETZ Bund, and we started that in November this month. We haven't gotten it back yet. So as soon as it is available, we will publish it on our help desk and you can take a look there. The only thing that is different this time is that we decided to have a test now for the output of the application to get a good first set of accessible features. So they are testing right now the accessibility of the application in read mode. Here is an example of a page that some users would look at if they, for example, have low vision. There is a test criterion that you have to set your browser to 400% magnification at 1028 wide viewport. And here you can also see here this blue line around this link here. And of course, they do not want to lose track where they currently are at. So it's important to also have this working. How do you create accessible content? So if you have a BlueSpice wiki and you are responsible for keeping the content accessible, you have to know that not all of these 92 checkpoints are really applicable to the authors. It's really a limited amount of things you have to check, but you have to know which of these checkpoints are applicable. And WCAG says an application or a website has to be perceivable, meaning if you are blind, you still have to see the image, so to speak. You simply have to make sure that an author that inserts an image into a page provides it alternative text with the visual editor, or if you link to videos, that your videos have subtitles, which of course would not be done in BlueSpice, but in some external system. For example, our help desk videos are hosted for that reason on YouTube because it's very easy to do the subtitles there. Operable means you have to be able to get to the content, and not all users, especially users with screen readers, they will not use a mouse. So usually you do keyboard testing and you tab simply through the application. You also have to be able to bypass content, because imagine if you have to get to a certain spot on the page, there are a lot of menu links all over the place, and you would always have to tab through every individual link. So there have to be mechanisms in place to avoid that. The application has to be also understandable, meaning when the screen reader, for example, comes, or any other user agent, they have to know what language the page is in. Also, if there are any errors on the page, the users usually, when they fill in forms, they cannot get stuck in the form because some forms, as we all know on the web, are better at error detection or telling you what your errors are than others. And some forms just drive you crazy because you try to submit it many times and it's just not possible. The criteria of robustness, I kind of put it aside because that's more for the developers. When they develop the user interface, they have to really make sure that the user agents and screen readers understand their code and can get through the page and serve the information accordingly to the user. Documentation, as you see here on our help desk at the bottom, both in the German and English help desk, there is a link to our accessibility statements, which you can reference, and where we will post the latest test results. Also on the German wiki, under the barrier-free link in the footer, I also have posted already some authoring tips for people creating the content. I want to demo this accessible content a little bit so you get an idea what to watch out for. We will then listen to a little bit of a screen reader demo, how BlueSpice is read to a user with a screen reader. Let me show you here this page that I have created. I have this one here. It's called test page. It is accessible. I went through it and it looks like this. It has images, tables, and some other things like, I think it's in English, and I have a little German sentence here, and it's fully accessible. On the other hand, this page, which has the exact same content, has a lot of accessibility issues. Let me point them out to you. Here, the problem is that all these headings that you see are not true headings. So somebody did not go in Visual Editor and select the correct heading levels for the page, but they simply applied bold formatting to regular page. So a screen reader would not be able to jump from heading to heading or even recognize these text passages as headings. Then we also have a graphic here where the user did not provide alternative text. So when a screen reader comes, it will simply read the file name to the user, which of course sometimes, especially if it's a downloaded image or so, has no value to the user. Here also we have a decorative image. And for it to be decorative, meaning the screen reader is really not interested in it, it's just a little swirly thing. You want to skip it. And here the user did not provide empty alternative text. So the screen reader will recognize it as an image and again read the file name. Here the German sentence has not with Visual Editor been marked as German language. So also it will probably not be pronounced correctly by each screen reader. But usually when you skip between languages, you should also mark it with your BlueSpice Visual Editor here. Here also we have a table, two tables. They will also not be accessible to a screen reader because a screen reader here, when you go into the tables, you can use as a user the arrow keys of your keyboard. And if you don't have the table marked correctly, you just here simply get numbers and you have no reference point. If you have implemented it correctly as a user, you have table headers. And here, even in the first column, you mark them as table headers. And then as you jump from cell to cell, you will realize that a screen reader will keep track of the context. And if you jump, let's say, from the fourth line here to the fifth, it will announce that this line change now is related to the location Prague. So you can associate it correctly. So let me start this screen reader example, and here this test page, that is what the screen reader will find. Here I already remedied all these issues and it will be read correctly to the screen reader. You will notice the screen reader will start. I tapped through the interface with my keyboard, and if you have never done it, you might notice there are some specific elements or functionality in the interface that support this keyboard navigation. For example, to skipping through the major areas here of the interface, the header bar or the page tools on the right side here, so it is easy to navigate. The screen reader will go through the entire top bar and you will always be able to spot where the cursor focus is because you get some indication with these outlines. So you can see what the screen reader is reading. And then here from the entry points, you will hear the first menu item. And then I skip into the content. And the way you can do it with a screen reader is, so you will not notice a focus change. I simply press the key for the number 1, which then goes straight to the heading to the title here, which is a heading level 1 on a web page. And then if you have done it correctly as an author, you then provide the screen reader with a headline, which is heading 2 in the background. These are heading 3s. It makes it very easy, as you can then hear, for a screen reader user to jump to the desired sections without having to read through the entire page. You will also hear the alternative text announced and a skipping of this decorative image here. And then the German sentence, you will hear the switch to the German language because, as I said, in Visual Editor, I marked it as German. And as a last thing, you will hear how the table is read.
Bullet link, skip to header bar, skip to main navigation link, skip to page tools link, skip to work area link. Header bar navigation landmark, close primary sidebar button expanded. BlueSpice wiki logo, return to main page, visited link main page. Search landmark, switch to full text search button. Table. List with 5 items, create a new page button. Open menu with options to create content menu button, collapse sub menu. You have 52 unread notifications menu button, collapse sub menu notifications. Global actions menu button, collapse sub menu. User menu button, collapse sub menu. Open secondary sidebar button expanded. Primary sidebar navigation landmark, entry points grouping, main page, visited link main page. Main landmark, test page, WCAG heading level 1. Navigation landmark, edit page button. Edit page menu button, collapse sub menu. Enable full screen mode button. Contents navigation landmark, hide the table of contents button. List with 4 items, 1 text formatting link. Out of list heading level 2, text formatting. Colors heading level 3. Graphic integration heading level 3. The alternative text for graphics is specified when inserting an image. Link, graphic abstract illustration of team members contributing parts of gears to the action. Heading level 3, decorative graphic. Language label heading level 3. The default language of this page is English. The following sentence is marked as German.
Dieser Satz ist auf Deutsch geschrieben und entsprechend gekennzeichnet.
Table examples heading level 2. Table with 7 rows and 4 columns, caption table with heading row and heading column. Out of caption row 1, column 1, location. Column 2, country. Munich row 2, Germany. Sales column 3, $150,000. Year column 4, 2024. Berlin row 3, 2024. Sales column 3, $250,000. Hamburg row 4, $85,000. Content droplets heading level 2. Formatted message heading level 3. Here the title warning is emphasized. Author used warning. Never pour hot water into the container.
That is an example for how a screen reader user reads through BlueSpice, and as that's a big requirement and also takes a lot of time to test correctly. That was only the output of a simple wiki page, but there are also a lot of interactive components in BlueSpice, and they are very time-consuming to test, but we do it all the time because we want to ensure that there are no accessibility barriers for our users. And that was a quick overview over accessibility status at the moment in BlueSpice. If you have any questions, we can now see if there's anything more you want to know.